Okay, guys, I'm back tonight. I'm doing a little video about genetics in bodybuilding and what good genetics for bodybuilding really are. I'm not a pro bodybuilder. I never will be a pro bodybuilder. I've never, I guess, technically been friends with a pro bodybuilder. I've known a couple guys that have competed, etc. But I want to. One of the things about it is everybody pushes genetics, genetics, genetics. You got to have great genetics. You got to have the best genetics. And that's absolutely true. The problem with that is it's not your genetics off of drugs, it's the genetics that you have in response to the drugs. Okay, it's the genetics to handle the drugs, it's how you respond to the drugs physically, how your body responds to it. I know guys that had just incredible genetics, but just did not respond to drugs in any way. Just kind of stayed where they were at, and the body just did not respond to drugs. So, and I've known guys that did not have tremendous genetics whose body who just blew up with the introduction of even the simplest of cycles. So, in my opinion, it's not your genetics walking down the street. Okay, yeah, that's a huge thing. Don't get me wrong. Phil Heath obviously had great genetics playing basketball, could be a bodybuilder, whatever. But Phil Heath also has the genetics that respond to drugs favorably. Yeah, I call it like hyper responder. There are guys out there who are hyper responders to drugs, and these are the guys that can really develop their body to their maximum potential. Now, a hyper responder to drugs can end up being bigger, more muscular, and looking more like a professional bodybuilder or a top amateur bodybuilder, etc., than a guy with tremendous genetics who just can't get the job done with the drugs. His body just won't take it, won't handle it, doesn't respond to it. And I've known people like this, and I think we all kind of have. So again, you got your guys like you remember Flex Wheeler. Obviously, everybody knows Flex Wheeler is kind of making a comeback now. I don't know what's really up with that. I should do a video on that, but everybody's beating that to death. So um, guys like Flex Wheeler now, tremendous genetics, one of the greatest probably genetically gifted people ever. Myostatin gene was they did a study on him was like non-existent in this guy. That's a gene that's either on or off that kind of determines how well you're going to build muscle. Dorian Yates talked about Flex Wheeler all the time. How Flex was, his greatest competition, simply because he was so gifted. So Dorian had to work harder to overcome Flex's superiority in genetics. And Dorian, of course, obviously worked harder than most people, and he had a tremendous. He made that big leap in '93, where he gained like the 20 pounds of solid muscle, big grainy look. Whether he introduced the Slim, I don't know what he did. But he had a genetic response to something, okay, that the other guys either were not getting at the time or were not trying at the time. It doesn't really matter because he had a great genetic response to it. If they weren't doing it, they weren't doing it. So he made that jump right there to another level, and he won some Olympias in that regard, and he had the great genetics for the. And the thing about the '90s guys is that they're dropping like flies. They dropped like flies in their 40s and 50s. A lot of those guys are not around anymore. Of course, Dorian's still around, but Flex had the kidney issues. Tom Prince had the kidney issues. Don Long had the kidney issues. I believe, and there's a bunch of other guys, all kinds of stuff. So whatever they're doing in the '90s, diuretics, whatever it was, to get that grainy look, um, freaking destroyed their bodies, man. I don't know. You got to give, they're today they don't have that look. Everybody talks about '90s being the greatest, and in my opinion, it was, but they don't have that look. The guys of today that did in the '90s, but they're also not necessarily passing away like those guys in the '90s were. Although a lot of these guys are still pretty young. You got McCarver, God rest in peace. Choked to death. I mean, is that really what happened, or did he? Was it an insulin deal? Did he screw something up with that? I don't know, man. I mean, there wasn't anybody around. I got to imagine when you're doing that, it's always good to have somebody with you. I don't fucking know, man. It's crazy shit and it's horrible. The guy was 26, but and no doubt the greatest genetics. He tremendous genetics, but again, genetics play a huge role in this. But genetics in response to chemical enhancement, how your body handles it in response to it is the key. Not basic genetics of how you're born out of the womb and how you get just moving weights around. That's not going to win you shit. Okay. Fitness competitors from local shows on up to the highest level of Olympia, they're all taking something. I mean, I know fitness women that local freaking shows that are popping, Anabar or whatever. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, so make no mistake. If you cannot handle drugs, you don't respond to drugs, you'll never be a successful bodybuilder. You can have the top flight genetics, just not going to happen. So, in that regard, genetics, in my opinion, is not about anything but how you respond genetically to the drugs you need to be a competitive bodybuilder.